Hey, my name is John Bambeck, and despite the fact this is the last day of my senior year, I'm going to be talking to you guys about externalities. Um, so far we've been taught, and we're generally taught, that the market's like the god of efficiency. But sometimes that's not the case. We run into stuff called externalities. And an externality occurs when all of the costs or benefits are not reflected in either the supply or demand curves. In other words, the supply and demand curves the private supply and demand curves are shifted away from what the social supply and demand curve is, so that the market doesn't produce the efficient outcome. First, we'll talk about positive externalities. Positive externalities occur when all the utility is not captured by the market or demand curve. So it would look like this. Here's your supply curve. Here is your typical social demand curve. But here is your private demand curve. An example would be, say a few old ladies in your neighborhood plant flowers, and their demand for flowers is in this curve right here. But your demand for flowers, or the total demand for flowers, say other people in the neighborhood enjoy the flowers, like the sight of the flowers, the smell of the flowers, so the social demand for flowers will be up here. Now the ladies only plant flowers at this quantity. That would be the market quantity. But this is truly the optimal quantity. So that would be a positive externality. Now, a negative externality is the opposite. All of the costs to society aren't reflected in the supply curve. So that would look something like this. You have your demand curve, and then you have a social supply curve and a private supply curve. You would have your social is right here. That's for society, and your private is right here. So basically, all of the costs to society aren't captured in the social supply curve. So you're going to be producing more than what should be produced. You should be producing at this quantity here, but you're going to be producing at this quantity instead. So on a positive externality, the distance between the two demand curves is known as spillover benefits, and on a negative externality, the distance between the two supply curves represents spillover costs. So the thing that AP is going to test over a lot would be, how do you get the social curves to match, or the private curves to match the social curves? So basically what you need to know is that to correct a negative externality, you would give a subsidy to either the producer or the consumer. A subsidy to the consumer would cause the demand curve to shift, or the private demand curve to shift to the social demand curve. A subsidy to the producer would cause the supply curve to shift outward, so that the quantity of the market would equal the private quantity would equal the market quantity. For a negative externality, you would tax the producer, so that the private supply curve would equal the social supply curve. So basically, you're trying to get the private curves to shift to the social curves. I guess that's all I have, and good luck on your test.